E-Gas by Michael Petruzzo. Copyright 2022 Wanakarian Press, Rosamond, California. Prologue. At a prestigious art college at the turn of the millennium, a group of artists found themselves in what is commonly called a zeitgeist. To a child, the bustling American prosperity of the 1990s seemed like a bicycle ramp of inevitability, and all the fiscal models only accounted for up and to the right economics. The college was the oldest art academy to ever be accredited by the United States of America. The original marble school building was stout and powerful, with a giant flowing staircase and 12-foot-high oak doors. Granite and marble busts filled the atrium, lit from above by an ornate mosaic dome, the first in the country. In the 200 years since its founding, the favor of each generation seemed to fall on the college. Even when the city went through periods of economic instability or social strife, the footprint of the university expanded. The original marble school building was now surrounded by several acres and generations of new architecture, all in service to the institute's original mission statement: collectivism, professionalism, exceptionalism, persistence. As the end of the millennium approached, the most ambitious building to date was erected. The Center for Future Studies and Technology was shaped like a mountain, presiding 3 stories taller than the neighboring Catholic Church, with a powerful steeple to match. The structure was covered entirely in blue glass windows, none of which could be opened to the outside. During the Great Depression, the city's train station was shuttered, and the institution purchased it for pennies on the dollar. A once important civil asset, dear to all the great city's residents, was to be privately owned and put in service of aesthetics and beauty. At the time, the train station's clock tower was visible from anywhere in the city. Early after it was built, residents nicknamed it Ma Bell. Great individuals including President George Washington himself would take one step out the front door of any pub in the city, look into the sky, and reason they had enough time for one more pint before catching the train. Ma Bell says I can stay for another. The people of the city were pleased, and they were always on time. And on a cloudy September day, long after it was repurposed to serve as a sculpture hall for the university, a young apprentice arrived for class on time and prepared, thanks to trusty Ma Bell. I'm Lestat. Lestat was an ambitious child, and was gifted a full scholarship to the college for his talents. He was determined to master the woodworking machines he watched his grandfather make haste with. Apprentice Lestat, can you please explain this machine? Belt grinder. 3,000 rotations per minute. State of the art. The classroom was silent. Compelling, Apprentice Lestat. Please approach the grinder and polish this copper amulet. The machine began to spin, and a mesmerized Lestat put his hand into it, forever changing things. Introduction. A collective of artists have transformed the former S.W. Best refrigerator repair factory on Kirk Avenue in the East City Midway neighborhood into the BRU, a cluster of residential and workspaces that are shared with 2 nonprofit organizations. The BRU is a complex of buildings including a pair of 2-story industrial structures plus a 3-story warehouse, all topped with a low-slung building with a corrugated metal roof. We need to bring back the guillotines. There's a glut of educated artists who are underrepresented in the labor market. In our thing, there's no head of state or primacy of individual rights. It's a challenging question: should the real estate developers, who destroyed this city in Washington's name, be allowed to step foot on Arlington Cemetery grounds to visit their ancestors? We are building something different, from the ground up. Lestat started the BRU with the funds he raised from losing his finger in a belt grinder at nearby Art Institute. Then he started a co-op business making dorm furniture for the students, and we branched out from there. About half of the 23 studio and live-work units have been rented to 16 tenants. It was only natural that we'd get into self-governance and issues of equity, said Lestat. The BRU has a library, orchard, solar panels, a revolving door for residents and artists, and the occasional visible uniformed officer. We're not messiahs, but we can't deny the fact that we're all privileged by birth. We share the responsibility to take care of our less fortunate brethren. The BRU stands for Baltimore's Revolutionary Union. We are the descendants of the Huey Newton Gun Club. There needs to be a space that shows, proves, and suggests just moral values. Emotions are powerful tools of cognition. One of the main things about the BRU is the fact that everyone has to take care of everyone. Equality is the first value of the BRU. Progress, education, the arts, business all reinforce the need for each of the 5 pillars to enhance the autonomy, the self-governance, the self-esteem and self-development of the residents. The residents and owners are pushing back on the typical landlord-tenant relationship. We're allowing our residents to participate in what they are paying for. We follow the principles of non-hierarchy, participation, and communal living. With non-hierarchy, we are trying to eliminate the tendency to have influential, strong personalities. We're not a cult. We're explicitly not a cult. We're not religious. We're not political. Non-hierarchy is a defense against these tendencies. We don't allow the use of private property. People always have to share their things. You don't own these things, you have to share them. We are building a different kind of institution. We consulted philosophers and members of local churches before laying an inch of PEC-certified radiant heat flooring. We are interlocked with our community, leaving behind decades of failed conventional strategies. We allow our residents to build a relationship of their choosing with the BRU. Everyone is responsible for helping each other. If there is any grief, we are the grievers, and we grieve the worst of the losses. If there is any anger, we grieve from boundaries of a legal nature. If there is any infatuation, we are infatuated with risk-taking. If there is any joy, we grieve the glee. We are here for people who are tired of the structures. We are here for people who love critical thought. Our philosophy is to follow the people who have a history of doing things that contradict the constraints of urban planning. People tend to mess up. We are trying to help out. Institutions can be radical. We're trying to build something that people might value, even if it falls apart. What material are these panels made from? Who did the labor? These are made from electricity, material labor, and the flow of capital, she said. This is what we are using. Our movement is to create institutions. This is called art. This is fun. This is a communal experience, said Jeff Allen. What is your goal? To promote the highest levels of autonomy, of respect, and equality, replied Jeff Allen. We and the rest of humanity are finite. We need capital to perpetuate our space. This is an investment in a future generation who will value what we've built. This is not a society run for ourselves. This is not a middle-class lifestyle. This is not an exclusive club. What you're seeing is the future. Do you know how many different colors of paint we've had on this building? We've been through every color of the rainbow. An artist named Jolene painted the BRU with a series of colors, colors corresponding to the colors of the walls that ordinary people have colored the walls of their homes. The BRU is a social experiment, said Angie. It's a living experiment. It's not a social experiment, shouted a resident at a hardwired house across the street. It's the BRU. It's the BRU, shouted Jenny Bear, in a polite tone. Jenny Bear has a double major in human rights and creative writing from the University of Chicago. She founded the BRU Radical Library. We are the BRU. There are many cultural and historical references, said Jeff Allen. We're down the street from John Paul Jones Middle School. Jenny Bear has pledged a vow of poverty. She considers the BRU to be a radical reclamation of land. Jeff Allen is a member of the BRU. He's also a member of the Baltimore chapter of the Huey Newton Gun Club. Our letterhead will tell you all about our goals. We see ourselves as a bottom-up institution. They began with a dumpster and leaflets. They held a series of meetings at the Southeast Anchor Library. The group has no top-down hierarchy. Our residents chose us as the board. We're a bottom-up institution of equals. We take care of each other. We are distinctly anti-hierarchical, said Jenny Bear. People say we're a cult. We don't know what that is. We're not a cult. Our goal is to build a community that can survive, said Jeff Allen. It's a bottom-up institution, so bottoms up. Jeff Allen took a sip from the chalice. Karl Marx. A small unkempt white cat with scabs covering his nose waddled into the kitchen. Karl, buddy, you know you're not allowed in the house, we've talked about this. Yes, Angie, I recall you ignored my modest proposals. It's 15 degrees outside, said Karl. Karl Marx's owner Michael moved to San Francisco a year ago and lives in a van. He's doing really well. I think I have diabetes and pneumonia, Angie, said Karl. Karl used to live in California, New Orleans, and Brooklyn. He's quite the cat, he's been around the whole country, said Angie. This country is headed for a cold civil war, Angie, said Karl Marx. Karl, scoot buddy, outside. Karl Marx labored slowly toward the open door but stopped halfway over the threshold and turned back to Angie. Each of his words created small clouds of breath in the winter cold. We need to roll back the state, Angie. We spy on all of our own citizens. Our prisons are flooded with nonviolent drug offenders. If you want to know who America's next enemy is, look at who we're funding right now. Every one of these problems is from government being way too big. Karl Marx walked into the moonlight and Angie closed the door behind him. How to sweep a floor. My grandmother taught me how to sweep a floor and it's the best way, said Timmy. You can use this large new broom I purchased with funds from the BRU savings vault. 7,000 count, sheep's fur bristles. They used this broom in World War II, said Lestat. I prefer a simple broom, said Timmy. It's the true art of sweeping. You don't need some expensive, giant broom to have a good old day of sweeping. Most people today have forgotten the art of sweeping. Timmy retrieved Angie's small corn broom and opened all the windows. He then walked to the center of the room and began to spin like a tornado. A Timmy tornado. First you put on your old clothes and then you run around like you lost your mind, said Timmy. You got to do it good and crazy so that it cleans up the floor. You got to move the dust around like you are trying to kill some spider. For hours Timmy spun and spun, whisking the dust into the air. Dust was everywhere. And Lestat was not pleased. Our BRU radical periodical library is covered in a fine dirt. I'm confused as to your plan here, said Lestat. What are you trying to accomplish? It's the true art of sweeping, said Timmy. As he strode across the creaking floors, Timmy thought of many creative things. How to make a girl smile. How to make a good batch of pickles. What causes the rain and humidity? High gasoline prices. How the sun will end. How the USA should end? How to make a red flower grow. How to do it all without running out of time. How to make a moat around a castle. How to stitch a seam. How to soothe a horse. How a man can defend his honor. How to make a loud noise soft. Why you shouldn't lock your doors. How to keep the world safe. And, how to make a new type of broom. Timmy used the broom like a sword, slashing dust and dirt upwards into the air. Seeing is believing, Lestat, said Timmy. Now you see the true art of sweeping. I admire your spirit, but perhaps we should just wait for the cleaning service, said Lestat. Lestat decided to use the opportunity to explain his philosophy of sweeping floors to Timmy. First, you get your broom like this. Lestat stood upright, and held the broom like a man. Then you start in the corner and you work methodically and slowly. I see, said Timmy. Timmy accepted the broom from Lestat. Then he placed it on his head in the position of a hat. I'm trying to get used to the new BRU broom, said Timmy. You're scaring the BRU bankers, said Lestat. The BRU bankers called a meeting and demanded Timmy be fired. Lestat returned to the floor. This broom is really digging into my neck. Timmy placed the broom in the desk drawer. I think it's time to pack it in here. I can find other work for you, said Lestat. Suppose I hold my broom like this and go ask the BRU bank clerk for some funding to purchase a large vacuum to suck up all the dust, said Timmy. Lestat opened a laptop computer and typed in the BRU secret code. He looked at the computer screen. I hope you are wearing gloves because you have lots of dust under your fingernails, said Timmy. Then Timmy held up a piece of paper. It was covered in scribbled letters. This is an invoice for my labor. Cheap, said Lestat. I'll tell you what, Timmy said. I will come back tomorrow at sunrise and sweep the office. And then I will sweep the BRU bank lobby. Then, I will search the BRU vault and sweep that. These floors are not clean. Unfortunately, there's a broom crunch at the BRU, said Lestat. There isn't much work to be done. So I have been fired from the BRU? Asked Timmy. Not exactly, said Lestat. You have been reclassified. Timmy took the broom and headed outside to sweep the street. The BRU bankers walked in and looked at Lestat questionably. I sent him to sweep the city, said Lestat. Chapter 5. Lestat, who founded the BRU, owns the building. The BRU is a non-profit corporation. We don't have any money, said Jeff Allen. We have a lot of ideas. Jenny Bear, who was eating a strawberry, stopped and asked, how did we get all this furniture? The original residents had a meeting where we talked about the benefits and the risks of interacting with the BRU. We discussed the things we didn't like about institutions. The next day, the BRU brought over all this furniture and we signed an informal agreement. We began a series of meetings to build a foundation and a structure. The group renovated a vacant building at the corner of East North Avenue and Chester Street. We're a bottom-up institution. We're volunteering here. No one is getting paid. We want to pay for some printing costs and food, said Angie. We're raising the money. We're collecting the money from all of our members, said Jenny Bear. We don't believe in property, said Angie. Pat yourself on the back. You've raised enough money, said Jenny Bear. We have no admissions criteria, said Jeff Allen. We follow the people. We're in the middle of a BRU renaissance, said Jeff Allen. We heard there was at least 10 other people joining the BRU. The BRU is a diverse group of people. We're the Baltimore Radical Union. Radical means doing exactly the opposite of what people would really expect you to do. We're a cooperative, we have no leader. We have no formal paperwork. This is the BRU. We're not just a registered charity. We're a group of people who believe in the infrastructures of society. We plan to tear down all of the infrastructures of society in the true name of equality. The BRU is equal. All members of the BRU are equal, said Ex-Livia, an officer guarding the BRU vault. That is the primary theme of the BRU. Where did you get this? We got this stuff off the street, said Angie. We get restaurant stuff from restaurants, from bars. Our friends who are bartenders give us all their alcohol. We have some stuff that was given to us by friends. Have you had a formal meeting? We have an executive board that controls all the economic power in the BRU. The BRU bankers control any major expenditures. The numbers are really good. We're a cooperative, said Jeff Allen. I'm just trying to raise my kid, said Jenny Bear. I'm paid in chips and beer, and I'm not homeless. I'm a working artist, said Jeff Allen. Jeff Allen built this, said Angie. We're a living institution, said Jeff Allen. I'm proud to be part of this, said Angie. We're proud to be helping out. I'm just sitting here watching the wheels go round and round. I really love to watch them roll, said John. Chapter 6. The BRU currently has 33 active members and countless rescued animals. This is very exciting, said Angie. We are having fun creating a place where you get to do great things, said John. We really want to make something that's precarious and alive. We have our own discotheque. It's going to be amazing. I'm going to have breakfast in bed. That's the great thing about an institution, said Jenny Bear. We have silent board meetings. It happens in the night, said Jenny Bear. We're trying to change the world. This is a place where people and animals can come together to fight for equal rights, said Jenny Bear. It's not some kind of a totalitarian hotspot. It's a friendly place, but it's politically radical. This isn't a frat house, it's a cooperative. The BRU approves new members every epoch, said Jeff Allen. We keep a list of people who want to join. We have a process. We're a group of people coming together. There's no strict dress code here, said Angie. When the group began, everyone wore black. These days, only our officers wear the uniforms, and that's only if there's been an infraction recently. That's super rare. John took his laptop, his soap, his lavender oil and his beer. I've got to go home and really settle down. They call me John of the Forest, said John. I just go to the woods, have a little smoke, and I come back feeling really well. John never came back. which was unfortunate to the BRU community because John did all of the important carpentry while the collective focused on expanding. Without John, the expansions would have to slow. Without an officer, the meetings would have to slow. We need to honor John. How much do we have in the safe? Said Jenny Bear. Everyone gathered at the safe. After John had joined the collective, the BRU had come to an important milestone. Collectively, the collective had collected $200,000. And collected between them, that was a lot of money. 10 grand in the safe, Angie. I found a few $100,000 in this safe last month. Is this all that's left? Said Angie. Wow, a full 10 grand. Everyone gets 2 grand each, said Ben. Just so we're clear, said Jenny Bear. I want everyone to understand that we're ready to defend this new institution with everything we've got. I'd rather just keep my 2 grand in my pocket, so it isn't burning a hole in this safe, said Ben. Angie closed the safe and went back to work, writing beautiful songs that could change the world. Art studio visit. Angie and ex-Livia sat by the BRU fireplace and sipped cardamom tea. My patron Stefano will be by shortly for a studio visit, said Angie. How are the new paintings coming along? Asked ex-Livia. Good. What are they about? The scenes depict violent American Revolutionary War generals marching forth into battle. The paintings are abstract and experiential. In my paintings, the American Army loses the war to the British Empire, replied Angie. The idea excited ex-Livia. Wow, I've never considered that. It's BRU code that peace is the most radical gesture. The Americans should have laid down their arms. If the British Army wasn't robbed its support from home, they could have cut off the head of the snake. Exactly. Imagine a world where the dual-purpose demolition/slavery machine of Manifest Destiny was stopped in its tracks before it left the station. Stefano, Angie's patron, pulled into the driveway in a small, yellow electric car. He walked through the BRU chicken coop to the back hatch door. Angie made all her patrons use the back door. Hi, Stefano. Angie. The last time I came here you were a mess. I know, who would want to live in a smelly dumping ground like this? Yet here we are. The smell is the least of your worries. Wait till you see the paintings, joked ex-Livia. Stefano, this is ex-Livia. She's a ranking uniformed officer of the BRU and is here as an independent community monitor. Let's lay down some ground rules. There will be zero tolerance for sexism, racism, homophobia, transphobia, unsolicited touching or comments. Angie continued. During the studio visit, if you feel that anyone has violated this policy, or if you feel unsafe for any reason, please approach the independent community monitor with your concerns. She is wearing a glow stick bracelet to raise visibility. Do you have any questions? Thanks, Angie. Replied Stefano. No, I actually stopped listening a while ago. I do not enjoy being made to feel uncomfortable. I chose this place because I like the idea of self-reliance. You're not selling me any free love ideas. Not without sex, anyway. Ex-Livia stepped in to delicately mediate the situation. So, Stefano, you came here to get away from the starchy, constricted life of an overly disciplined community? Yes. Replied Stefano. Well, what kind of life do you want? Asked ex-Livia. Conversation paused momentarily. I want to do anything and everything, there are no limits. That's what everyone says, but you could be more specific. Conversation paused momentarily. Stefano pulled a large clay bottle of vintage mezcal out of a pouch. I think we should each drink from the bottle before we continue this conversation. Everyone agreed and the bottle was passed around. Ex-Livia took off her tight wool sweater and put on some music. Stefano placed the purple cloth drawstring pouch from the mezcal over Angie's head. I told you this place was a cult. Ex-Livia laughed. We've all been brainwashed. Oh no. Stefano, Angie and ex-Livia sat drinking for hours. At some point the group was in almost complete silence, except the music and soft conversation. Ex-Livia lamented. I need a laptop for my acting career. My job as a server barista in Mount Washington doesn't pay enough for me to get a down payment together. So, why don't you just tell your patron that? asked Stefano. Ex-Livia was confused. Lay down on the couch, said Stefano. For an art dealer guy I just met? Ex-Livia laughed. For a patron, replied Stefano. What does that mean, exactly? Asked Ex-Livia. Patrons expect certain qualities out of the artwork the artist creates. Patrons are very specific about what they want. This is what Angie does. She creates these very abstract paintings, but you must be aware that the paintings are very specific and one of a kind. They are not for everyone. You must have an intimacy with your patron and they with you, in order to create a successful relationship. I will be your patron if you wish it, said Stefano. I want you to be my patron, said Ex-Livia. And I want you, said Stefano. Ex-Livia laid on the couch. Angie, let's see some of your new paintings, said Stefano as he sipped from the clay bottle. Sure, let me bring in the new work. Angie stood up. She was still wearing the purple sack over her head. Feeling the walls with her hands, she walked down the hall slowly. Stefano laughed and turned to Ex-Livia. So, what is it, exactly, you want me to do for you? I need a laptop. I'm an actress and a poet. You must understand how important this is to me. I do. Then why don't you just give me one, said Ex-Livia. Because that's not the way this works. Think of it this way, you provide the service, I pay the bill. What kind of service do you expect me to provide? Everything, replied Stefano. Deal. Angie wheeled in a large oil painting of General George Washington. The painting showed a dark, foggy, cold forest. The ground was covered in snow and hushed birds hovered, in pairs, looking down below. The birds were dressed in black and held their beaks to the ground, close to the hard, frozen, white blanket of snow. Something was buried underneath the cold, hard, white ice. This unknown object left a dark, ominous impression that seemed to bleed from the painting and into the room. This is from earlier this week. Angie's voice was muffled as she spoke. I was up really early on Thursday. I rode across the lake. I rode over to the island on the far side and there was this mist coming out of the trees. It almost looked like a horde was coming through the dense forest. Stefano scoffed. What do you think that says about your work? I don't know. What do you think? Asked Angie. It's too symbolic, replied Stefano, and I know you're no historian. History like your wrinkled face? Symbolic like your stupid yellow car? Symbolic like the symbols you're trying to extract by coming around here? Angie walked out of the room. She's a great artist, Stefano. I really like her work, said Ex-Livia. I know. I probably didn't have to shoot her head off, replied Stefano. I'm screwed, said Angie and sat down on the couch, drinking. This is a bad piece. It's too dark, said Stefano. I know, said Angie. Just then there was a loud bang. What the? Stefano turned to Angie. Someone knocked on the door, Angie said. Ex-Livia walked to the door and peered through the blinds. How did they know where you live? Stefano turned to Angie. I don't know, Angie replied. Ex-Livia stood at the door, looking out of the spy hole. I can't see who it is, and I can't see any cars. Just one long limousine. It's probably just some dude, said Angie, who was still in her sack. It's not, Ex-Livia replied. I'm gonna go and see who it is, said Angie. Angie opened the door to 5 men with 5 briefcases. Hello, Angie. Hi, Eddie. Eddie was another one of Angie's patrons. Eddie and Stefano were mortal enemies in the art world. They were always in competition, always trying to outdo each other, always trying to steal clients from one another. Eddie was rich, his family was rich, he was the scion of a rich family and had a rich family name. He was tall and thin, with a thin mustache and round glasses. He was pretty unspectacular. Sorry, Stefano's here, Angie said, trying to keep the door shut. I know that, replied Eddie. We've come to skip all the bullshit. Fine. Come on in, Eddie. Bring the others, Angie replied, holding open the hatch door. Each of the distinguished men filed through it. Hi, Stefano. I love your little yellow car, Eddie joked. Great to see you, Eddie. Thanks, Stefano replied. Would you like some mezcal? Unfortunately not, we are here on business. The BRU has a bounty for us, and we are violating BRU policy by being here. Me too. Stefano replied. I know. We saw the BRU has vandalized your little yellow car, that's unfortunate, said Eddie. They did? Said Stefano. Yeah, they painted Eddie's bitch across the whole hood of your car. Replied Eddie. They painted Eddie's bitch on the hood of my car? Is that true? Said Stefano, taking another sip of mezcal. Yes, it's true. That's why we're here. We're going to buy all of Angie's new paintings, before a single brushstroke is laid on the canvas. Eddie opened the briefcases one at a time in a row on the table. This is more than enough to buy all of Angie's paintings. Angie, can you please promise me 6 of the new paintings? Stefano begged. No, I want all of them. Growled Eddie, and Angie, as part of the deal you must take Julius my horse as a gift. This is non-negotiable. I can't take a horse, Eddie, Angie said. Then we're done, said Eddie, and he was all going to leave. Look, we've got a problem here, please let's just talk it out, said Stefano. The rest of the men filed out the door. Eddie, you can't leave, shouted Angie. Stefano bargained with Eddie as the men filed into the long black car. Eddie, don't leave. I'll take the horse, if you please will just let me buy 6 of the new paintings. Eddie smiled. Deal. Angie collected the briefcases and the limousine sped off down the alley. That could have gone worse. Stefano put the bottle of mezcal on the ground and lit a cigarette. That horse has emphysema. I'll just have it put down. Stefano replied, inhaling and crunching the numbers in his head. Can I see the other paintings? I only made one so far. I was going to see if anyone liked it. Stefano puffed, just print the old cartoons. What? That wouldn't be art. Angie replied. You won't make the deadline any other way. You're ordered to make 36 paintings by March 4th. Just print the old cartoons backwards on new canvases. Hire an assistant to paint them with fake brush strokes so they look like real paintings. Angie sipped the last of the mezcal. Deal. Chapter 8. Karl Marx hopped in through a decorative window. Can we watch the Rolling Stones documentary Gimme Shelter, please? Angie looked at Karl's blank face, with his huge crusted eyes cresting his rounded head. She wondered how his weak legs held up his wide frame. His fur was patchy. He always had dry food and water, but Angie hadn't let him sleep inside in months. I have plans, she said, opening a mason jar of sunflower seeds. The BRU is hosting an inaugural gala next month, and tonight we're having a planning session. There's going to be a lot of important ideas on the table. Sounds productive. What is the gala celebrating? Asked Karl. The launch of a new initiative, connecting with international groups who are trying to rebuild American society from the ground up. The BRU wants to restore us to a type of nation that is found in other parts of the world. We're planning to learn from their solutions and implement the solutions back into our country. The BRU seems to waste a lot of time on silly stuff, said Karl. Let me guess, is the BRU coming out to disavow free speech events? You might want to brush off a little bit of your Western Bloc propaganda, said Angie. Want to hear a joke? Asked Karl. Sure, said Angie. A judge in the Eastern Bloc walks out of his chambers laughing his head off. A colleague approaches him and asks why he is laughing. I just heard the funniest joke in the world. Well, go ahead, tell me. Says the other judge. I can't, I just gave someone 10 years for it. Angie opened up a fat brown binder stuffed with papers and began leafing through it. Let's discuss the first report. The first report is about the United States infrastructure. The BRU wants to dismantle. Karl interrupted Angie with the impunity of an 1880s sheriff. Have you been talking about that queen of yours again, Angie? On Independence Day? Karl Marx hissed and spilled the tea across the table. A struggle ensued, but Karl took off down the hall and unraveled the electric tape from his leg. Angie chased down the hall after Karl Marx with a BRU tear gas container. She found the cat in his makeshift bed, panting and yelping, on the brink of death. I'm not going to spray you with tear gas, Karl. I refuse to do it. Angie ran for the phone. What do I tell the mayor? I'm calling the national police, said Angie. The police are going to get you in trouble, Angie. I'm a cat, said Carl. You need to leave, said Angie, splashing a glass of water on Carl's face. I'm a cat, Angie, the government and the police aren't your friend, said Carl. Carl, you need to leave now. Angie called out. I will not be bullied. I'm speaking my mind as a member of the BRU. Carl hopped to the kitchen linoleum. Angie sat at her laptop typing furiously, grounding herself for the mouse click on the group email button. I'm here for you, Angie, said Carl, stepping to her side as she clicked the mouse on the send button. At that very moment there was a knock at the BRU door. Miss Lynn, we hear there has been an animal-related disturbance at the BRU, said the police officer on the other side of the door. Everything's okay, said Angie. Miss Lynn, did you send a group email to the mayor and about 20 human rights organizations? Yes, I did, said Angie. Tomorrow at 2 p.m., you need to be at City Hall. You will be questioned. And the BRU residence has been submitted to the e-gas registry for evaluation. The officer and the sergeant walked away in unison, waving their guns in the air. Now you're in trouble, Angie. What did I tell you about the government? You shouldn't get involved, said Carl. Carl cocked his head to the left side of the kitchen table and Angie lunged to make him jump onto the windowsill. Angie looked to the window, watching Carl leave her life. The mayor and the police can't help you, Angie. Support your own local community, said Carl, before taking a risky 3-story jump into the courtyard. Angie washed out the mason jar and then brushed off the spilled sunflower shells. Then she walked down the hallway to the dining room table for the BRU community planning meeting. Chapter 9. Big day today. The BRU won approval for a bank account for the BRU. I'm really proud of these funds. I really am. We've been catching hell trying to get a bank account for this thing. We called up every bank we could think of. We asked every bank to open an account for us. They denied us because we didn't have any funds. It was very irritating. We finally found a bank where they had a program for the arts. The city puts money directly into an account for the BRU so we can use the money. The process has gotten easier over the past few years. That happened a few days after Timmy's grandfather joined the BRU board, said Jeff Allen. Timmy's grandpa has mob grease. In the 1970s that guy stopped trucks. Halted newspapers. You look in the papers that are delivered? Their man was elected in the papers. Regardless of the votes. The new president won medals in that same paper. The BRU is anything and everything anywhere and everywhere it needs to be to obtain grant money. We're that flexible. Many of us lived in the house when the house was still a frat house, said Jeff Allen. Some people have been here for more than a decade. There's 5 houses. They're not made of bricks, they're made of sweat, said Jeff Allen. The BRU is responsible for the rehabilitation of several houses, said Jeff Allen. I've lived in this house for 20 years. I've been part of the BRU 17 years. I think these houses are the best houses in this city. There's stuff that needs to be fixed. There's stuff that needs to be fixed, obviously. How many residents are currently occupying the property? That is a great question. I can't tell you off the top of my head how much of the BRU is here. Jobs change. Animals come and go. Angie had gone to work at the studio. John had been gone for 2 weeks, and Jenny Bear was away on a bender in the woods. John never came back. Ben had called Jenny Bear, who was asleep on a forest floor. She had a terrible, terrible migraine and was refusing to see her doctor. Instead, she organized a 6-hour drum circle, and now she has trouble forming basic sentences. We're dealing with a lot. The dangers of misinformation. I remember the exact time and place I saw my first misinformation. I was only 6 years old at a grocery store. We were waiting in line, and on the cover of World News Report there was a man who ate 5 cigarette sandwiches a day. They said he had done this for 20 years, and there was a picture of a cigarette sandwich on the cover. I got that cigarette sandwich picture stuck in my head. It was all I could talk about, and by end of the week 8 more children from the neighborhood joined me in this obsession. Soon the 8 of us were sitting around the table drawing cigarette sandwiches, some skinny, on long baguettes, Others were modeled after our school lunches, replacing the protein with 20 unfiltered Chesterfields. One Saturday afternoon in July there was an accident. Little Bill got a hold of some potato hamburger buns and a pack of his uncle's Camel menthols at a backyard family party. He called us all over to eat his masterpiece sandwich. Fresh cigarettes were piled to the heavens, resting on a golden bun, all dressed with lettuce, cheese, tomato and mayonnaise. It was the most beautiful thing. Little Bill took a bite. It tasted so delicate. Our eyes began to water from the menthol. We laid down in front of the plate in the grass in silence, the image of life fading from view, waiting for the day to go by, my mind falling to the bottom of a pit of hallucinated hamburger buns, our heads falling lower in the grass, until finally a large shadow rose up at our feet and tugged us out of delirium. It was my mother. She pulled us up, and with her help we started the walk back home. But we didn't make it. Before we got to the neighboring street I began to feel very short of breath and my vision narrowed to a pinhole. All 8 boys began to convulse in unison. It was written in our autopsy that we had succumbed to injuries sustained falling victim to misinformation. Each of our parents got a knock on the door and was interrogated by the police. Who made the sandwich? One of the parents' bodies was found in a barn with torn bones, concrete dust in his lungs and a hole in his head. The Medusa of books. Come on, Jenny Bear. Let's read these guys' books. They call me Medusa. The guys' books get hard as a rock. Jenny Bear had established the BRU Radical Library. She put it on the map. I stare them in the eyes with their books in my throat. I was on hands and knees. Jenny Bear had a book stretched out in her hand. Her back was against a tree. I was on the opposite side of the story, against a different tree. The angle had to be perfect. How do I look? That's a good angle. You are really pretty, Jenny Bear. You pulled your hair back in a ponytail. I can see your eyes. I want their books. You are the Medusa of books. I want every man's book. The sun was out and shining. The sky was blue and clear, not a cloud in the sky. The two of us were perfecting our positions. We were caught in the same fever. We just needed to flip some pages. I love reading. Me too. I want to know what the author is thinking. I know. I want to read your boyfriend's book on my back. I want to know what he is thinking. I love it when she does this. When we were doing this before, we would stare and make eye contact. Things would escalate from there. We didn't think we would ever do this again, but when we did, it was better. He's my boyfriend. And I want you to read his book. I want you to read it from every angle while I watch. I am wet thinking about reading his book. I know. I'm wet thinking about how you will look as you read his book. You will swallow it, and I will read it in your eyes. Your boyfriend's radical words will fill me up. It is making me hot. Are you hot? Yes. It's like a sauna. Open your book for me. Are you sure you want my first ever book? Jenny Bear reclined on the bed. This is a good book. It will be a good read. I pulled my tight pants down just enough so I could turn the pages of my book as I read Jenny Bear's. I alternated turning the pages, first Jenny Bear's and then slowly myself. I flipped the pages. I highlighted the font. I went back to the end. I read the book as I locked eyes with the Medusa of books. I read how she was going to sneak into her stepfather's house. I read how she was going to read his book. I read how she was going to put his book in her mouth. This is a good book, I said. It is a good book, she replied. It's a good book to read. It's a good book to read from on your back. You're pretty, it reads from your eyes. I'm pretty when my book is in your mouth. When you are on your back like this, I can see right inside of your story. I have never read a book like this before. What are you thinking? I'm thinking about how your paperback would look published with an open binding. I pulled her book out of my mouth. I had 2 books in my hands now. And my pants were down to my knees. I sat up and I put my book on the pillow. I put my book over the pillow, and put Jenny Bear's book in between my legs. I used the covers to smother the books. I made a small hole in the middle of the cover, so I could read them. I grabbed the covers and slowly used one hand for each book. I locked eyes with the Medusa. Keep reading. How do I look? Prettier than all the books in the world. You look like you work at the library. Do you have a library card? I asked. I have a card. Do you work at the library? I work for the library. What's your name? Jenny Bear. People need to know. This is a good book. I want to read it to the last page. I can see how wet your eyes are. The last page is so hot. I want you to read the last page. I'll let you read the last page. I want to read the last page. Jenny Bear tossed the book in my hand back to me. I read the last page, from the middle, laying on my back. I put the book in my mouth and I read it. I finished reading the last page and I smiled at her. It's a good book. It's a good story. I can't believe how you read that book. I needed to know how it ends. I couldn't take my eyes off your last page. I think we finished at the same time. Jenny Bear blushed. I never thought it could be like that. Chapter 12. In my early 30s, I worked at the BRU library and sold drugs on the side. Every August, and it always snuck up on me, gel acid suddenly got a little too easy to get my hands on. I was struggling to barely keep my life together and used the extra money to survive. One day I thought I was taking a birth control pill and swallowed a double dose of gel before bed. The dead giveaway was a handful of hours staring into a bathroom mirror, and a life-changing job offer from the toilet tank. What am I doing with my life? I asked my melting face. A voice replied instantly. It sounded like a mummy's voice, and it was a deep voice. Hey baby. Do not let your fire go out, spark by irreplaceable spark in the hopeless swamps of the not quite, the not yet, and the not at all. Do not let the hero in your soul perish in lonely frustration for the life you deserved and have never been able to reach. The world you desire can be won. It exists. It is real. It is possible. It's yours. You can choose to be part of us. E-gas? I whispered. You're one of us, repeated the man through the toilet bowl. What? I asked him. You could be employee number 1 at E-gas. What is E-gas? I replied. E-gas is a solutions company. We offer different products and services. Our main product is derp. It was recommended by Aristotle before any formal concept of logic was proposed. In the absence of logic, we recommend derp. What would I do? I asked, fearfully. We'd give you a job that no one else can fit. You know, like the guy picked to be Spock in Star Trek. The job will be a big challenge and not easy to do. The salary will be good. If you do well, you could make a lot of money. Okay, I said. Do I have to relocate for the position? I felt as if I was going to fall over and was only being held up by the talking toilet bowl. Yes. E-gas pays all relocation costs and expenses for you to get up off your lazy ass. This is a great opportunity. Very few people get this chance. I'll think about it. I don't know what I want. My face was glued to a bathroom mirror. I observed the small mole above my lip like the surface of a planet. You have a choice. On one hand, you let go. You choose to remove everything vague from your life. E-gas will perform CPR and breathe responsibility and meaning into your dying mouth. Choose the other hand, you wake up in your bed like nothing ever happened. You follow the hit band Pepper on tour this summer with your high school boyfriend. You get married to the vagueness, bound to a lifetime of loosening your grip on entropy. The man moved to a hole on the side of the toilet and climbed out. I climbed down and went to the cubicle across from him. Are you ready? He asked me. I didn't know what was happening. He just gave me this offer and I felt dizzy. I nodded. Good, he said, go home and shower and get dressed. Go to the e-gas company. When you get there, go to the person at the receptionist's desk and tell her you are here. Then go back here and wait. Do you have any questions? Lol, what is all this? This is your chance to change your life. You can get it right this time. E-gas needs you to make us strong. You can be useful with us. It's so obvious. You just have to take action. As he said that, he turned into a cloud of red gas. I'll see you at the office. The non-aggression principle of cats. They never killed anything, asked baby stuff. They only started killing stuff when the Americans got off the boats. It's true. The Soviet cats came through the land bridge. Russian blue cats established Sebastopol in what is now Northern California. Those cats started the Russian River Valley. It wasn't easy. The river rats were a Yankee gang that almost swept them out of existence. Russian blue cats are a big deal species today. They never went anywhere. The history of free speech at the University of Chicago. The CSU system has a long history of free speech difficulties, beginning with the University at Buffalo, which disrupted Rat Subramanian's 1991 graduation ceremony by blowing a whistle, throwing pies in the speaker's face, and disrupting him with a bullhorn. Subramanian sued, and the court found his rights had been violated. The university has since created a free speech policy to govern such occasions. The endowment was enormous. $1.5 million. And that was just the number of memorial ad spaces allotted to the prohibition on free speech, which was instituted in 2011. Free speech was temporarily reinstated in 2014 because of a push from conservative pundit Charles Krauthammer, who believed the new restriction on student speech was unconstitutional. In October 2016, the university announced that it would reinstitute the rule again in fall 2017. The announcement received a backlash from students and placed the university's accreditation under review by the Middle States Commission on Higher Education. The decision was met with mostly negative responses, though some were more positive. The Catholic Student Union stated that the right to free speech held constitutional value, but criticized the university's refusal to acknowledge that rights differ on different grounds. Free speech was reinstated as President John J. Bowen renamed the rule from Statement of Free Speech 1.3 to Free Speech, the freedom of not speaking. 1. A college student is not allowed to express herself on campus. After careful review, the president of the CSU, who in the name of the CSU created the policy, felt that the new rule may be unconstitutional. The president of the CSU, and members of the Board of Trustees, called on the president of the CSU to speak out on this issue, as it was such a fundamental matter as to warrant an inquiry to the senior Supreme Court. That president declined to say who he thought should speak to the Supreme Court, and suggested other university representatives take up the task. Thus, President John J. Bowen, the president of the CSU, who did not create the policy, but was a part of the task force that helped draft it, stepped in and spoke, saying, "The university has reached out to the executive committee of the Board of Trustees to inquire in regard to the possible constitutionality of the policy," he said. "Once the board has responded, we will follow their direction." The response urged the university to stick to the policy as it was. Speaker of the National Association of the University of the State of Colorado and former NCAC chairman Tom Norris offered to help the CSU in the process of defending the policy, explaining the legal case for its creation. Norris stated, "I'm concerned about the resolution that states that the college does not tolerate speech that is intended to cause pain, which is subjective." He went on, "I understand that if the free speech policy is upheld by the court, it will not be a legal victory for the CSU, but more a concession that there isn't cause for the commission to block the policy." The university responded to Norris's offer, noting that we consider topic-related hate speech that intends to cause pain to be violent speech. The CSU Council has recognized that, and we are sensitive to this. 2. A college student is not allowed to express herself on campus, because policies surrounding the above statement have been created. The presidents of the University of Chicago, the University of Chicago, and the University of West Chicago have all voiced their desire to pass new policies preventing student speech. The presidents of these three schools mentioned above are all in support of the creation of the policy. While free speech is a value in the core values of the University of Chicago, we recognize that language and expression can be offensive to many. University of Chicago President Robert Zimmer stated, "Many students already report that they have been subject to that type of hateful speech on campus. We want to ensure that all of our students can thrive in an environment without any discrimination of any kind." The policies are intended to make clear that racist, sexist, homophobic, and other such speech on campus is not in alignment with the deeply held values of our university, which is grounded in Quaker values of integrity, equality, nonviolence, and social justice, West Chicago Trustee Chairwoman X. Livia Anastasi said. During the debate, President Zimmer made it clear that the policy was merely a policy created to codify what was already the norm in the dining hall, as a means to provide consistency. The policy talks about language that is inherently disruptive and contrary to our commitment to an environment that is unfettered and safe, Zimmer said. Language is not subject to the whim of the individual. Vice President William K. Kelly of the University of Chicago said that the policy was not about violating free speech. If we can't define what freedom of speech is and is not, then we can't teach it to our students, Kelly said. As long as we're aware of what is and is not consistent with our values and what is and is not truly free speech, it doesn't mean you are violating students' rights. It means you are offering them the opportunity to hear what they consider to not be a view they want to hear. The rules are complex and difficult to understand, even for experienced administrators. 4. Why students love their college, but hate freedom of speech. This statement is intended to be read as a build-up to the three major arguments addressed in the rest of the article, claiming that traditional concepts such as diversity, equality, inclusion are not being followed by the University of Chicago, from the perspective of policy and simple human feelings. 5. The policy perspective is fundamentally flawed, as it does not relate to the students in any outward way. The students do not feel safe on this campus, which directly conflicts with the school's policy. 6. The policy does not address in any way the idea of freedom of speech, and instead only serves to address the concept of safety. 7. The criticism regarding the school is not just an attack on the leadership and the administration, but is also an attack on the student body and the campus itself. 8. The phrase "the love for freedom is the love for others who possess freedom" was written by Hannah Arendt, in her book The Origins of Totalitarianism. Ms. Arendt is a political theorist, historian, political philosopher, and activist whose work is considered contraband by CSU campus police. 9. The phrase "freedom of speech is my right to not listen to you" was said by Katie Hopkins on the television program Katie, which appeared on the television network Fox and is syndicated on closed-circuit dorm network television. 10. The national conflict between freedom of speech and feelings of safety of all students is not present on this campus. 11. Free speech event is not a real event, nor is it even possible to have a real event on campus. 12. The statement "I stand in solidarity with all of my brothers and sisters" was released today by the Faculty Senate of the University of Chicago. The proposal was written by a committee of 5 professors, with the unanimous support of the entire faculty. 13. The above statement by the Faculty Senate of the University of Chicago was released within minutes of the above statement. They had been planning to release the statement for several days, but as soon as the students began to speak out, they could not simply remain silent. 14. Richard Branson owns a private island in the Caribbean. He is a part of a class of individuals who own large areas of land which no human beings can legally inhabit. The board unanimously agrees this behavior is reprehensible. 15. The President of the UAE called for the creation of a new global union based around equality, diversity and kindness, during the United Nations General Assembly, where he was elected President of the Assembly on September 13, 2017. His first action as President was to offer his full support to the global union. 16. The University of Chicago is a wealthy private institution that has recently secured a number of large donations, including $500 million in summer 2017, and an additional $1 billion in 2018. 17. Due to its favorable donation history, and its incredible reputation in recent years, the university has been under increased scrutiny from the media and from critics who call the university's decision to eliminate free speech events a liberal slap in face. 18. The recent closing of the school is due to the inability of students to attend the university, either because of their own fears or fears instilled by their families or the media. 19. This campus is not safe. Not safe for students and not safe for faculty. 21. The university is not a safe place to learn and grow. 22. To protect what is already secure, the University of Chicago is acting within its rights to restrict free speech. 24. The University of Chicago is acting in all of its rights to restrict free speech. 25. We encourage you to attend public meetings, speak with administrators and politicians, protest, demand change, and to support the faculty's freedom to teach as they see fit. 27. This upcoming semester is not an opportunity for better understanding the minds of the students. We hold cynical closed meetings as a means of ensuring that there will be no open conversation regarding hate speech or discriminatory language. 28. The university's leaders have handled this matter as if it were a bad habit, a habit that must be broken. The president of the University of Chicago is doing a fine job of breaking this habit, and we must all applaud him for it. A celebration was held, attended by many faculty and students, in the quadrangle of Greif Hall, the largest building on campus. This was in the spirit of the university's most recent resolution, "The love for freedom is the love for others who possess freedom," and was not intended to be a debate, but rather a party. The president spoke at a podium in a lengthy speech. "The students of this university are not safe," he said, as the crowd stood in agreement. He continued with his speech, sharing with the crowd that the university would be closing in order to care for its students. That they would hold a number of special events designed to promote dialogue, understanding, and togetherness. He said that the university would listen, and would respond. And that they would take their time doing it. He ended with a single sentence, the university's unofficial motto: "We honor and protect the students' right to think, to speak, to imagine, to dream." To the crowd's surprise, a large number of students ran to the stage and crashed against the podium. The security, the police, and the faculty were all overwhelmed by the amount of students attempting to commit an act of protest, and they were forced to push the students away. The crowd held a peaceful march of several thousand students, ending in front of the library. "I need to speak with the president," yelled the lead speaker. The crowd was mostly peaceful, with a few outbursts of joy. "It was awesome," said one student, "and the food was really good too." The president and the faculty met with the crowd at the library, where he reassured the crowd that the university was working with them, and would do its best to meet their demands. The bottom line is that free speech events can be controversial. The Student Life Center at the CSU Radical Library hosts free speech events, as well as unflinchingly condemns them, depending on what is appropriate for a specific topic. The CSU recognizes notable contributions of students and faculty for their research inside these common-sense boundaries. Free speech event resources. There are many departments that we support to offer help if you are affected by a free speech event. Dean of Students. Office of Equal Opportunity. CSU Health Network Counseling. Ombuds, for CSU employees. Employee Assistance Program. Multicultural Counseling. Vice President of Inclusive Excellence. Victims Assistance Hotline. Incidents of Bias Reporting. Student Diversity Programs and Services/Cultural Centers. Asian Pacific American CC. Black/African American CC. Native American Cultural Center. El Centro. Pride Resource Center. Student Disability Center. Women and Gender Advocacy Center. Women's Center. Office of Academic Diversity and Inclusion. Department of Counseling and Psychological Services. Department of Disability Services. Student Mental Health Center. Office of Diversity Education and Student Life. Coordinator of Minority Student Affairs. Dean of Students, Office of Inclusive Excellence. Office of Diversity Education and Student Life. Office of Student Success. Provost's Office. Law Enforcement. Bureau of Criminal Investigation. Campus Safety. Counseling and Mediation. CSU Police. Mental Health Counseling. CSU Counseling Center. Office of Counseling. SHACS. Toledoan Counseling. Wellness Center. On-Campus Resources. Criminal Justice Program. Division of Vocational Rehabilitation. Learning Partnerships Program. SUNY Concurrent Enrollment Program. Child Advocacy Network. American Civil Liberties Union. The Foundation for Individual Rights in Education, FIRE. Students for Censorship. Student/Faculty Research Priorities Project on the Ethics of Free Expression. The Office of Public Affairs. Expanded Allegation Access Program in Sexual Assault and Verbal Harassment. Assistant Provost's Office. International Resource Key Holder. The Keepers of the Colorado Open Records Act. The Autumn Leaf. Journal of Critical Studies in Media Ethics. Journal of College Student Developmental Deceleration. Journal of the Academic Library Association. Journal of College Employment Research. Journal of Personality and Social Scoring. Journal of Educational Research. Journal of Law, Information and STEAM. Dialogue. Academic Studies on Free Speech. Academic Studies Opposing Free Speech. Academic Studies Supporting Free Speech. Arguments against free speech. Arguments for free speech. Explicit content values. Gravest concerns on multiculturalism. Gravest concerns on equality. Gravest concerns on diversity. Gravest concerns on accommodations. Men being on top of women. Many students performing almost equal intelligence to the average score. The average score removal policy of our university. Females being on top of men. Feminized education within progressive men's pride-dominated scoring rules. More men performing well in testing unconsciously still stands true today. Especially after the reorganization of our Department of Education. Censoring the Jungle Book. Consider the costs of negative consequences. Free speech cannot resolve conflict. I'm not going to bow down to your opinion. We don't have to accept their opinions. Stop comparing women's health. The shield of free speech or not. Free speech had her strengths and weaknesses. Recent days. Free speech refusal agreement. Appellee's petition. The appellant's petition. Mr. Time said, "Our dogmatists have violated Lenin's teachings. They never use their brains to analyze anything concretely, and in their writings and speeches they always use stereotypes devoid of content, thereby creating a very bad style of work in our party." The boy and girl looked at each other in silence for a few seconds, after hearing such strange logic, until Mr. Time explained, "Lenin said that we must not mimic the bourgeoisie. By dogmatist, I mean those who live and work with stereotyped formulas invented to justify the old society. These are the ones who always wear a mask, who cannot think deeply, recklessly mess up reasoning, and who, in fact, are the lackeys of bourgeois society." Aha! Jill was nodding, thrilled. Stephen ate graham crackers in a trance, listening intently. There are people who think only superficially and in a very one-sided fashioning. For them everything is crystal clear, everything can be summed up in one phrase. And they think they can build socialism on the basis of such a superficial and imprecise understanding of science. But something is wrong. Mr. Time continued. It is possible to argue we cannot completely solve any problem. Jill spoke up. They think about nothing, reason superficially, and do not use their brains to think about things deeply and seriously. Instead, they rely on being able to make a statement that is apt, and they think this makes them clever. Stephen's child mouth was filled with dry crumbs, and they fell on the couch pillow as he spoke. Dogmatists choose a particular catchphrase as a magic wand and are devoid of creativity, reasoning, logic, and imagination. Mr. Time smiled. We should be so adept that we could win at any debate. Stephen shouted, we should be ready to counter with a good argument at any moment. Exactly. Mr. Time agreed. We need not understand, but rather argue one problem after another. We need a special politics that wins every debate, Stephen said. Mr. Time too. The next time the children visited, Mr. Time explained, when we said above that two opposite things can coexist in a single entity and can transform themselves into each other because there is identity between them, we were speaking of conditionality. That is to say, in given conditions two contradictory things can be united and can transform themselves into each other, but in the absence of these conditions, they cannot constitute a contradiction, cannot coexist in the same entity, and cannot transform themselves into one another. It is because the identity of opposites obtains only in given conditions that we have said identity is conditional and relative. We may add that the struggle between opposites permeates a process from beginning to end and makes one process transform itself into another, that it is ubiquitous, and that struggle is therefore unconditional and absolute. Stephen spoke up. Fruits and plants are made up of drops of water, which is not a cup of water. Tao is not emptiness and Hind is not exalted. The human body is the same, It is made up of a number of organs, but the organs are no more than an aggregation of atoms, which are themselves not corporeal. Would it therefore be correct to say that two opposed things in their essence are the same, while their manifestation and condition constitute the universal difference? Jill threw a bottle of barley wine against the wall, barely missing Mr. Time's ear. "They're both fruit," she muttered, wringing her handkerchief. "They can't be contrary. They're just two different kinds of fruit." Mr. Time touched his ear and said mildly, "In their essence they cannot be different, just as in their conditions they are two different kinds of fruit. The difference between them is what allows them to realize their potential of being forms of fruit, that is to say, the dialectical difference." "I don't understand this sort of thing," Stephen said. "They're wrong just because they're opposites, that's all I know." Jill looked at both men and pulled a knife from her boot. "Steve is right. Fruit is not rice, and rice is not fruit. That's as far as I want to go for today." Mr. Time 3. An individualist cat sprung up behind a Buddhist tapestry and slashed Mr. Time's face with a claw. "I'm a cat." Mr. Time had been feeding Karl Marx since he was left by his owner Michael. The kitten, left for dead, had covered himself in patches. Tormented by a series of failed marriages and his owner Michael's neglect, Karl took to drugs and poetry for years. Mr. Time and the cat lay together on their back, looking up at the starry night sky, night after night. They were comrades. But cats can change, and those times were long ago. "Let these kids go." Mr. Time stood in fear, clutching his face. He helped Karl and couldn't understand the attack taking place in his own Marxist library. "I'm an individualist by nature. Why not just give everything away?" replied Mr. Time, bleeding. "I did." Karl Marx and Angie discuss his past marriages. My first wife was an idealist. Jenny. She decided to have her first litter of kittens perched high in a tree. That's so cute. Like baby birds. One by one, each kitten fell from the nest and died slowly. Why would she do that? Jenny loved in a very particular sort of way. She couldn't accept the truth. She was a very sweet girl and brought me sardines. My favorite. The truth? She said the truth was her least favorite dish. That's strange. She had a very strange sense of humor. How so? I gave her a typewriter. You did? I did. I bought it just for her. After the kittens died, she wrote stories about them. Beautiful stories of little house cats hanging out in trees, chasing butterflies. She wrote her own versions of their short lives. How did you react to her stories? I told her every night to give up on writing. Why? I told her it was all dead kittens. Did she listen to you? Of course not, I was saying the truth. Karl took a pull from his whiskey and remembered Jenny. She was a hopeless romantic. She believed in bird poop and fairy tales. She believed in love. Let's talk about your second wife. My second wife wasn't Jenny. She was a radical. Her first litter was just a bunch of strays. It was an open litter, and the kittens were free to come and go as they pleased. She never experienced real motherhood. What happened to her? She spent less and less time at home. She emerged from the basements and closets like a ghoul from a horror film, her face bathed in purples and reds. What did you do? I told her, if you love without evoking love in return, if through the vital expression of yourself as a loving person you fail to become a loved person, then your love is impotent, it is a misfortune. What did she say? She walked away and left me floating in a gutter pipe. Karl Marx and Angie discuss his past marriages too. My third wife was perfect at first. Cats in a blanket. I didn't know I could love another cat like that. She was everything. Cats in a blanket. She was a beautiful black and white cat, just like me. I don't know why she loved me, but I loved her and there was no doubt about that. She made me feel whole. You see, I only have 3 legs. I lost my right front paw in an accident. Sometimes in the evenings I can't help but feel a bit lonely, but today I am with you, my friend. Cats in a blanket. I was alone for so long, until that day I met that very special cat. Cats in a blanket. She was so very special. I thought she was just like me. I was wrong. She double-crossed me. We would hunt every day together. Sometimes she would come into the studio I built from scratch that we raised our kittens in, and we would roll around in the sawdust built up on the floor. The house I built was cats in a blanket. I was very happy. But she wasn't happy, she was plotting. It wasn't until the next morning that I was with her in the woods that I realized. She dug a hole, placed my three-legged body in it, and buried me. I thought she loved me. It was so cold. I could smell the dirt, taste the dirt, feel the dirt. I knew she had done this. I could hear her breathing in the leaves above me, leaving me to die. I remember laying in that hole. I didn't die. I remember feeling happy that she had done what she needed to do. Cats in a blanket. The death of Karl Marx's owner Michael. Did you hear the news? Karl Marx's owner Michael passed away this morning. What? Have you broken the news to Karl? No, I haven't seen him lately. He's going to be devastated. E-gas. A curious freckled woman with a mole walked into the BRU one day. Hi. I'm from E-gas. Hi, I'm Angie. Welcome to the BRU. Nice to meet you, Angie. Great place you've got here. I love all the plants. Thanks. These are from cuttings from a sage tree in Nicaragua. The woman handed Angie an informational packet with details about the services and products E-gas had to offer. She could not finish. Microchips? That's not even funny. It's not funny at all considering that I've been asked to collect information about your guy's health and what's going on inside the building. I'm going to have to ask you to leave and return with a manager. Angie protested. The woman smiled. Her grin was like an airplane hangar with teeth in it. I am employee number 1 at E-gas. I got us all the government contracts. We built the E-gas company horizontally, so every employee, even employee 97, has full manager authority and privileges. The only one with more authority is Kretzmer, our CEO. E-gas has no authority. The BRU doesn't recognize E-gas. Replied Angie. How many animals are in this building? There are 194 in here. No. There are 239. There are 227 in this building. This number has nothing to do with the National Animal Identification System. Here is a list of all the different kinds of animals. This is not an exclusive list. We do not maintain files or an official animal species list for our residents. You don't have me convinced. You're buying a bunch of animals from a distributor and you aren't registering them with the appropriate legal authorities or a registered broker like E-gas. E-gas employee number 1 looked up at the ceiling of the building and then down at Angie. Angie looked at the list of animals on the table. She started counting them quickly. There are 193. 296, said the woman. What's this? Asked Angie. This is a toxicology report from the Office of Sanitation. Employee number 1 handed Angie a clipboard with a bunch of papers. I don't have time for any of this. I'm not employed by E-gas, said Angie. Sorry. These reports are now your legal liability. How much is this going to cost me? I'll be billing you for the cost of an average animal in the wild, plus $64. I'm not paying this. You have to. You have 20 days to pay this. Are you kidding? Let's say 24 days to be safe. Okay, we're going to say 25, let's say 26 days. E-gas employee number 1 pulled out her phone and tapped on the glass. Seconds later, a large man in a suit walked into the BRU. He looked like a killer whale with a tie. Ms. Angie, said the man in a deep voice. You are now a customer under the E-gas National Animal Identification System. This is a mandatory service we provide for an appropriate fee. You're in big trouble. Added employee number 1. The man took Angie to a new meeting room. We're here to talk about E-gas. I'm the CEO, Kretzmer. So, we're doing business. Blah blah blah. Fine. Fine. He repeated. Then he sat down in a chair. Angie was struck by what looked to be a pair of metal knuckles. He reached down and activated the BRU intercom on the table. This is Kretzmer, the CEO of eGas. Employee number 1, and I have come to make a legitimate business agreement with the BRU residents. He turned towards Angie. Each of you animals in this building will need to register with eGas within 26 days. Thank you. Angie, we need to train you at eGas University. We can do a 2-week in-house course on how to be good managers. Then, you need to go to the School of Systems, in small classes. Don't forget about $64 for each of your animals. Angie, do you have your employee card? What? No. Why would I need my employee card? Asked Angie. It's going to be very difficult to come up with a counter offer if you don't have your employee card. What do you mean counter offer? Employee card, mumbled the CEO. I'm an employee of the BRU, not eGas. I'm not sure what kind of response I'm supposed to give you. It's going to be hard to pull off a counter offer. The CEO put his finger on a plant. Do you see this plant? It's an endangered species from Nicaragua. If I report this to the mayor, then the whole BRU gets shut down tonight. That means you, ex-Livia, and all of the animals are on the street. Let's do business on my terms. The CEO began to rub his metal knuckle against the plant he was holding. Angie could hear an annoying grinding sound. You need to stop that. You're going to kill the plant, said Angie. I'm not going to do any of that. I just need to show you that I can make this happen. You're going to have to take your metal fingers out of here. eGas employee number 1 laughed. The metal fingers are just the beginning. Employee number 1 lifted her shirt to expose a scar that looked like a faint hernia. All of your residents will need eGas microchips and vaccines, said employee number 1 as she walked out the BRU door with Kretzmer, the CEO of eGas. Angie read the toxicology report and then decided to go for a walk. She was trying to collect herself. She had great legs and she loved walking. She walked to the elevator and pushed the button. The elevator door opened and revealed the empty shaft. She slid down the shaft to the floor, shattering both ankles. The bones poked through the skin and the whole 9 yards. It was terrible. She sat on the floor of the dimly lit shaft, counting the little patches of light and darkness. She could hear a humming noise. She could hear the elevator motor. She heard a squeaking noise, like a door. A door in the shaft opened and then slammed shut. A 6-inch space separated the elevator from Angie. Right before it crushed her, she noticed the bones of a small cat. Carl. Buddy. Angie laid and embraced Karl Marx's bones at the bottom of the BRU elevator shaft. You were right about everything, Carl? Carl was finally at peace.